Hey everybody, this is Perch. I've started and stopped this video now 5 times because I screw it up in the first minute. Either I start to pronounce words in a thoroughly bizarre way that is different from my usual mispronouncing in order to get engagement in the comments, but just in kind of a dumbass way. And the only thing I can think of is that right now I'm staring at it and it's 105 degrees outside, and I think that is the reason. That my brain has gone dumb. You know how they like it's the boil the frog. I think I've been boiled all day and I've just gotten stupid at this point. And I know, so I already know the joke. You don't need to make it, but it's especially bad now. Anthologies. So I'm just laying it out there for you. I used to like anthologies, and I still do in the indie world. If I go way back, Stephen King used to do anthologies. There's like 2 books. I think he had Skeleton Crew. He's actually done several, but I'm talking about old Stephen King. I'm talking about Stephen King in the '80s, and there were a lot of I liked his short stories. I thought they were cool. I actually enjoyed. I enjoyed them because one thing about Stephen King books, and I'm saying this as somebody who used to like his books quite a bit and then kind of fell out of love with them in the mid '90s because they got repetitive and I don't know what he was doing. But, I like The Stand. I like It. I like books like that. But one thing that is true is Stephen King books had a lot of filler. And in his longer stories, they would kind of drone on and on and on about certain aspects. Even though I liked, say, The Stand had some padding. And then in kind of a hold my beer fashion, Stephen King, they came out with the unabridged Stand. So it was like, hey, you thought we had filler before, F you, here's some more filler. And they did that. That's kind of unfair because there was some good material that was put in there as well. But I liked Stephen King's short stories because it was a quick hit. You got kind of this quick, kind of different concept and everything. And every now and then, somebody would take one of his short stories, like The Lawnmower Man, and create a thoroughly different film that in no way resembled the story to almost a laughable degree. It was like, I think Maximum Overdrive is another one that, that was a pretty good, tight short story that was turned into something completely different. That was, actually Maximum Overdrive is kind of funny to watch now. So didn't they renamed it to try and make it more to squeeze out some more money from fans of the book? Did that happen, or am I imagining it? Anyway, in comics, there used to be good anthologies, and there still are, largely on the indie scene, and there's been some crowdfunded anthologies that have been quite good. But in the big two area of things, the anthologies are pretty dreadful. Now, I'm curious to meet someone who actually likes the anthologies that they're currently putting out, which have really been represented in DC's anniversary issues and Marvel's we're copying the anniversary issues formats. I think the anniversary issues at times have been kind of a celebration, and that was kind of, to me, it feels like me sitting in the car with it being 105 degrees outside. It feels like I was boiled into subservience and didn't realize that I was getting something kind of terrible, because I remember when some of these DC anniversary issues first came out. I think there was a Batman one was one of the first, and Action Comics 1000, everything else, and they wrapped it in a celebration of storytelling. And in the early ones, they got some creators who were relevant to the character, but not completely. I remember thinking at the time, like, man, there's a couple names they really left off the list here. But it felt it's like, oh, okay, we're doing something nice for a bunch of different creators, and we're getting a bunch of different styles from the past of the character, and okay, this is nice. And I got kind of wrapped up, as I suspect many of you did, in the, hey, look, it's got a bunch of popular creators from years past. It's it's a celebration of people who brought a lot to Batman, and I kind of forgot or didn't pay attention to the stories that were actually in the comic. And many of the stories, if you actually, forget about the names, if you take them away, because I gave some of these anniversary issues to my wife. I'm like, oh, here's something to kind of read. And she, of course, knows a lot of these names, but she's not as up on it as I am. She doesn't, she reads comics more for the stories, and the people writing them is very much secondary for her. And there's a lot of people out there who are like that, where they go by, like, this is a good story, and you saying, hey, this is something by Alan Moore is irrelevant, by and large. And it's just a personality type. But I remember giving some of these comics to her, and she went, there nothing went on in this comic. It's pretty flat. And I were like, but it's a celebration. But look, it's got all these different creators on here, and these are people who contributed to Batman's story. And my wife's like, I'll just read those issues. The actual ones. It's like, oh, Scott Snyder had a run on Batman. I'll just read the Scott Snyder run. That's okay. I don't want to read the 8-page kind of moment in time Scott Snyder story. I'll just go back and I'll read the 40 issues of Scott Snyder, because that's then you're getting the real thing. It's kind of her point of view. And I remember being like, nah, you don't get it. You don't get this kind of celebration type thing. And then, DC did several more anniversary issues because it sold really, really well. So they're like, hey, who else could have an anniversary? Let's put the Joker in here, and let's say Harley Quinn and Calendar Man. He gets a special. He didn't, but you kind of feel it's coming, right? We're about to get Green Arrow here, and it's then we got into the Marvel Voices anthologies, which are meant to be kind of representative of indigenous people. They had an Asian one. They had a Pride one. They've had different ones, and then DC has had kind of their version of the same, and they put these out. But here's the thing: these stories are largely terrible, and when you read them, you feel, at least for me, I feel bad for the characters they're supposed to be supporting. Like the two, we just had the DC Pride and the Marvel Pride. And I feel kind of embarrassed and bad for the gay characters who are in these stories and just, having a miserable time. Or, I mean, just the funny thing is, they don't feel like a celebration. They feel like very bad stories put into these things. They feel like comics that are, do not have a start, middle, and end. And it's like, hey, here's a comic about some people having lunch. And so, but you're going, I mean, okay, they're having lunch, but what's the, is there some great conversation? And usually no. It's the conversation is usually pretty not just tame, just goes nowhere. Like there's not really any point to it. There's not a big revelation about the character's personality. There's not a key moment. Like it's not a good character study of anything. It's just like here's some people talking about dinner. And invariably, if there is a kind of a fight or conflict, it's extremely just meaningless, to the point of comedy. It's a comedy sketch rather than a conflict. If a villain shows up, the villain is extra dumb or apologetic about the fact they're showing up at all. And it is it's goofy. Like it doesn't even amount to anything. And on one hand, again, I'd like to meet somebody who's really liking these issues. Not to make fun of you, honestly. If you've been listening to the channel at this point, or if you're new to the channel, this just happens to be the first video that you're listening. No, I have no interest in making fun of you. If you like them, great. But how? How are you liking them? I want to understand. Because there is no real comic here. And again, to be clear, to reinstate again, a lot of indie companies doing this just fine. A lot of the Kickstarter and the Indiegogo comics are doing this just fine. It's really just the big two, and I do believe it's these anniversary issues. I think my wife was onto something that spoiled it by creating these non-stories and kind of tricking you by going, but it's a celebration of these creators. And then you kind of miss the fact that there's no actual story, that they're just kind of, farting around with just some, hey, look, it's Batman, he's swinging through the night, and then it's done, and then it's over. Like I don't know what happened here. And I know, actually, to the point, Joe Corallo, who comes on this channel frequently, he's done some anthologies. I've read his short stories. They're good. They're good short stories. They have a beginning, a middle, and end. There's some kind of conflict. There's some kind of meaningful thing. And I go back to those Stephen King stories I read in the 80s. They were good. In fact, you liked the short stories because you didn't have all of Stephen King's ramblings. But how did it go so wrong for comics? And for me, it's terribly wrong. These comics are awful, by and large, to the point that not only is it the story bad, the comic is unenjoyable, but you actually feel like the characters come out worse at the end. Like you read this comic and it's like it somehow it did more damage to the character than if there had been no story, is how it feels. But maybe I have it all wrong. So you tell me, anthologies. Do you like them? Do you not like them? Is what value are you getting Throw it in the comment below. Maybe I'm just being way too negative here, but I'm trying to say this from the standpoint of I do like anthologies as a concept. I don't like any of the kind of ensemble pieces they're doing now. I don't think that means they should dump anthologies. I think there's a path to how you do it right. I just don't think they're doing it right now. But maybe I'm wrong and these things are wonderful, or maybe there's no way to make anthologies work. You tell me in the comments below. Like and subscribe. I'm being boiled alive here in the Pacific Northwest. Thanks for listening.